Hello, everyone. I'll give you a second to get connected. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1313th New Social Environment. I'm Magley, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Pat Oleszko and Dan Cameron. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Pat Oleszko received a BFA from University of Michigan. Since the early 1970s, she has staged projects and performances at institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art, the Kitchen, Whitney Museum of American Art, Performance Space 122, now Performance Space New York, Museum of Contemporary Craft, now Museum of Art and Design, Lincoln Center, and more. She was a recipient of the Rome Prize in 1998 and the Guggenheim Fellowship in 1990. Oleszko lives and works in New York City. And our host today is New York-based curator, art writer, and educator Dan Cameron. He launched his career in 1982 with Extended Sensibilities at the New Museum, the first institutional effort in the US to examine gay and lesbian identity in art. For over 40 years, Cameron has held senior curatorial positions at the New Museum, Orange County Museum of Art, and CAC New Orleans, and organized more than 100 museum exhibitions. In 2007, Dan founded Prospect New Orleans and organized the first two editions. And now I will pass it over to Dan to get us started.
Thank you so much, Magley. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day in New York City, and I am so honored to be able to have this conversation with Pat Oleszko, an artist whose work I've followed indirectly in many cases, but who I've followed and known about really for my entire adult life. She was very much part of the alternative art press, including Art Right and Art Forum and other magazines in the mid 70s. I remember when the announcement first came out for her exhibition in 2024 at David Peter Francis Gallery in Chinatown. I just remember saying to myself, finally there's a gallery, presentation of the work as sculpture. And happily enough, Pat has just come off the heels of what sounds like an incredible opening at Sculpture Center the other day. So welcome, Pat Oleszko. Congratulations on this show. It's so great to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you. It's my very great pleasure to be here and in this esteemed institution of the Brooklyn Whale. So I'm glad to be in its wake.
Well, that's great. So I was doing a little bit of digging, and I realized, you're from Detroit. You are from the great state of Michigan, but you were studying at Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan at a time when, at least from the perspective I had as a teenager growing up in upstate New York, felt like the center of the universe. I mean, there was the Students for Democratic Society and John Sinclair. There was the MC5, and the Stooges. There was Motown, even though it was a little far away, but it was happening and spilling over. And now that I know that about you, there are some aspects of your work that make more sense to me now than I did. It kind of clicks that you would have been getting your undergraduate degree at a time when the society was in full transformation, or at least it felt like it. Can you reflect on that at all in your experience as a student at that moment in time and some of what you picked up?
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned it in such glowing terms because I think that Ann Arbor really was the kind of cultural center of the whole alternative movement of the 60s. Many other campuses like Berkeley and Minneapolis. I know it's not Minneapolis. It's Madison and Harvard were strictly political. But in Ann Arbor, it was kind of panoply of all the different arts that were really doing interesting stuff. Of course, there was all the music stuff, and then there was also new music, which was with Bob Ashley and Gordon Muma
Oh, wow. Hmm.
And then the Ann Arbor Film Festival was the first underground film festival that was started several years before I got there, which has grown into like a 75-year-old film festival. And that festival was something that was in with my one of my mentors, George Manupelli, who started it, and also Milton Cohen, who did performances. They encouraged anybody it wasn't strictly about films, it was also about any kind of expression of live art that could be done. It was done in the halls, it was done in the streets, it was done in the parking lots. And so it was like this, and plus they were performing themselves with the once group, and they were traveling and bringing everybody to Ann Arbor. So there was this constant stream of folks like Andy Warhol. I mean, the Velvet Underwear got their first gig in Ann Arbor. Andy was there. Klaus Oldenburg, Morton Feldman, Rauschenberg performed at a piece on top of the parking structure. It was so it was so exciting. And the art school was like the center of this universe. And it was so crowded, three times as many people in it as designed for. And there was so much going on that I never wanted to go home. I was just like, okay, I'll just like be here because there was it was great. My neighbors were the weathermen, and and Black Studies was the first thing that was started on that level all over the country. So even though I couldn't afford to go out of state, I got the best possible education in the classic sense and the Platonic sense.
Now,
Symposium.
did you go directly from Ann Arbor to New York then in the sort of mid late 70s? Because that's when I first became aware of your work.
Yeah, yeah. I was doing performance from like the very well, it would be the first semester, and there was no word for it. There was no study of it. Curiously, that there is so much of that now, but I figured if I was going to continue learning and developing my work, it would be done in the great metropolis rather than seeking out a teaching job for something I had no idea what I was doing. So I figured, well, if I'm here long enough, I'll just wiggle my way onto the bench. And so,
So was your thinking about your work performance driven? Because I know you at a pretty early point you seem to also be making sort of on camera works where you were creating a costume or a situation specifically to be photographed. Or do I have that mixed up?
no, no, that was part of it. I was doing stuff live, and I was doing stuff for films. I was doing stuff in the streets and on the stage, which I started on the stage at the Ann Arbor Film Festival, but I also won the amateur striptease contest in Toledo, Ohio, and became Pat the Hippie Strippy. So that was another place where I explored and performed my art.
Pat the trippy hippie,
No, the Hippie
hippie trip,
Strippy.
the hippie strippy.
Yes, that was a name that was given to me by the chief of police. Okay.
And did she then reappear in a performance art context, or she was not?
I
Oh,
have used the idea of putting on clothes and taking them off seductively or not, or hypnotically or absurdly since then. It was a truly wonderful experience that was given to me by Rose LaRose, a very famous
uh,
stripper who ran the Esquire Burlesque. And I had my name on the marquee. Okay. There are photos in my show at the Sculpture Center.
wow. I'm practically speechless.
Well, you should be.
I should be. You know, a lot of artists at that time were working in performance. Um, and I think performance art became real, associated with Franklin Furnace, the kitchen, other spaces at that time where you were regularly performed. But when I think about this generation, I don't really think so much about the um, the costuming the figure, the dressing of the figure as a sculptural statement. I mean, you can look at Robert Wilson, for example, and say, well, the furniture he made was
Right.
extraordinary on stage, and then you put it in the gallery and it stayed being extraordinary. But with costumes, I hate to call it that, but when you're making something that you then wear or perform with, you don't expect it to continue to be beautiful or meaningful after the performance is over and it's only there as an object. I mean, we do expect that from high fashion. The Met will have at the Costume Institute, any number of stagings of fashion. But I think of what you're doing in the art world as being rather unique, relatively unique, let's say, in that you've kind of created a strategy. I know you probably wouldn't think of that, but you've created an approach that really belongs to you, singularly.
Um, uh, I can't agree with you more.
I mean, your show is happening at the Sculpture Center. You
I
know,
know, and
you don't have to be
basically,
there and you don't have to be performing, but it works as sculpture, and that's I think the thing that's the art world is coming to terms with right now, perhaps.
well, basically, I think of myself as a sculptor. I just happen to be using my body as the armature and literally the vehicle for the ideas. In reference to like other folks that were in the performance business, and it was so new and different, and everybody was rather singular, and there weren't that many of us. So everybody had, as we were all exploring and doing stuff, everybody had one kind of thing that they were rather known for, and then that was the primary expansion level. Like Laurie Anderson was music, and Eric Bogosian was his verbal loquacity, and um, and so mine was sculpture. It just happened to walk and talk and fart and fuck. That's which was fine, but it has always been a fact that I had to have I had to have like the strong enough visual. My ideas were primarily visual, and then I activated them through words and through movement and through situation.
One of the things that I love as well is you do not shy away from humor and humor. You embrace humor, and it doesn't even, sometimes it's just goofy puns. And sometimes it's play on words. And I feel like that's your kind of your Dada experience in a way. You're very free in the way that you use, again, silly puns just to
They're not silly.
no, but
They're not
puns,
silly.
but word playing
Okay.
to get the idea across.
Well, it helps to be a linguistic chameleon um, when you're dealing with the idea of absurdity in daily life. So I don't see that much difference between what the wordplay is as and compared to what the costumes, if we can use the word costumes, on the body are. So I mean, I think that you know words are like ready-made clothes. You alter them by juxtapositions and interiors, and that's basically the same thing I'm doing with the sculptures that I'm wearing. And so the language, of course, would be as absurd and obfuscating and you know challenging and anyhow fun. Okay.
No, good. That's a clarification. Sorry for using the word silly. I guess I thought of it as a childlike, in the terms of its playfulness.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Please.
We're going to have a reading at the end, and I'm going to read a singular piece of literature that inspired me at the age of 8, which was, not surprisingly, Lewis Carroll.
Wow. All right. How about we cut to the slideshow, but kick it off with this extraordinary 58-second ad that you produced. But just before we see it, could you lay the background? This is early 70s or late 70s?
Yeah, yeah, it was early 70s, and it was just I worked with a young filmmaker to make. He had a gig, or he had a gig. He was he had a teaching project uh, to make an ad for someone. So he came to me and I said, okay, let's make an ad for myself. And so that's the history of it. So let's see how it
Wonderful.
holds up.
Wonderful. Thanks.
The subject, Pat Oleszko, quick change artist of great renown, recognized most often as creating ruckus around town. The underworld calls her the mistress of disguise. Seen here as the Omen, she masquerades as 1 in 5. The subject now is Charles Patlis, pumping up stuffed satin she thinks Atlas. A range of sex and she becomes a bizarre DAR. Sally's secretary attracts from near and from far. A Pied Piper children follow the Padettes with delight. A character with such enigmatic presence is difficult to fight. One hardly escapes the visual charms of the subject here in her coat of arms. But is this a subject? She's a one-woman snow. She'd become anyone, anything for fun at the word go. So if you're looking for action, get out one thin dime. Call Pat Oleszko for a really good time.
Bravo. All right, why don't we dive into the slides because we've got a lot of visual material to cover, and I get the feeling that each one has a a story behind it that is great to share. But that was really great. Maybe we can see it again before it's over. Liberties Abroad, 1976.
Okay, well that piece has a long and beautiful histrionic past, but it was originally done for a Fourth of July parade outside of Provincetown and Providence, Rhode Island, and so I rode the Statue of Liberty Island and was pulled by an old boyfriend in a tugboat and was plied with beers and by the participants in the parade and fell off the stand and was pushed up the hill by the Portuguese fishermen that lived in the village. And anyhow, so it's become a signature piece and it's gone in many different places in many different directions. And you can't see it there, but in the crown are all the little tourists looking out onto the world.
Is that included in the Sculpture Center show?
No, it's not because
Oh,
it's in these challenging times, she will be seeing more walks in the protests.
ah, beautiful. What do we have next?
So this was my Christmas ball, which this was done up at the McDowell Colony, and I did a performance there. That is a 16-foot round ball, and I'm dressed as the Christmas tree, and I thought that I was going to just push it along the road, and it was in a giant meadow covered with snow, 3 feet of snow, and the wind caught it, and then became this rather slapstick rendition of me as the Christmas tree running after the runaway ball.
Now, so this was 2006, 20 years ago, but you began using the documentation of your performances as photography, um, beginning really early on. I think I was reading something where you mentioned that one of your teachers at Arbor actually encouraged you to use photography for the performance as illustration. Do I have that right?
Well, yes, sort of. That was the idea of how I was going to actually make a living in New York. That he said, well, you don't want to be a hired freak at a party, which has happened anyway. Never mind. Um, he said, so if you use the costumes in terms of illustration, then you can go to magazines and try to sell them the idea that you can use yourself photographed as a concept. And so back then, back in the day, in the early 70s, magazines were really extraordinary and very experimental and wonderful vehicles for art. So I went to Esquire and I went to Ms. Magazine and I went to and so I was in all of the New York, I was in all these magazines, New York Magazine and Playboy and Penthouse and Smithsonian and Sesame Street magazine. So it was a way to somehow make a living off of the work that I would be doing or that I could do using my body as the vehicle through photography.
And I can't think of anyone else who was doing that at the time. Although if you think about the world we're living in today, it seems like a template for a contemporary influencer. That you're kind of creating these situations and then documenting them and putting them out there. And it's your art.
Yes. Well, uh, I mean, in addition to waitressing, this was a way to make money. It was, uh, and anyhow, somebody had to be first, so might as well have been me, she said immodestly.
Move on to the next one. Okay, this is one of your best known pieces, and it's been shown many times, no, over the years, the coat of arms, at
Right.
least one on the left.
And
And
the maiden on the right.
and it's the handmaiden from Japan. What is the situation? What's the environment we're looking at here?
It was just it was a feature for Art Forum magazine, and so I took a lot of my uh, favorite pieces and just to put them in an environment that would make them stand out. So I had 6 pages in an art forum, and so this was where I took those two characters. The coat of arms was originally done for the a party that was for celebrating the anniversary of the Surrealistic Manifesto. And as artists are usually, and certainly was in the Bauhaus days, some of their best ideas were found and portrayed or experimented and developed at parties. And I
Right.
think that's the MO of a lot of artists, particularly when they're in art school. And so I developed that piece. I did that piece to wear to that party, and then it became a theme that I continued throughout a lot of other pieces. But the Handmaiden is a piece that I actually stripped out of. So with the male, all the hands are going out, and with the female, all the hands are reaching in. So to a chant of puns about arms, armor, and hands, I peel off all those clutching, grasping hands and get down to nothing.
Get down to your birthday suit.
That would be my birthday suit. Yes.
Now here's
There,
the coat of arms
that,
by itself.
yeah, right.
And what did anyone else ever perform in it, or was it always you?
No, it's always me. It's my signature piece, okay?
Well,
I don't let anybody else wear that one, and I don't let anybody else wear the Handmaiden, but uh so and it has gone on to star in many a performance, I must say.
and are you still doing performing in the coat of arms in the Handmaiden?
Well, not the Handmaiden, not at this advanced state of rage that I'm at right now. It's not really appropriate, but I have been known to wear the coat of arms anyway, and I've also taken the idea of hands and gloves and expanded that idea. So, for example, at at the opening at Sculpture Center the other night, I was wearing a whole plethora of multicolored hands as my costume, and I must say I look kind of snappy.
I'm sure. Maybe someone wants to share an image of that a little later on. Next one. Let's keep going if we can. Yeah, this piece I think is pretty incredible. Neo-fascism. Uh,
Um, well, that was a commission from the New York Times fashion magazine, and they coupled me with someone I can't remember who it was, but they asked like 6 artists to interpret the fashion of that particular spring, and so I got this one person, and she sent me a bunch of stuff that turned out to be plastic. So I created the neo-fascist Wendy Wherewithal and her soul sister, Miss Trixie, with those way before Melania 6-inch heels.
Hmm. The again, the punning here is uh placed over a situation where it's almost like you're predicting the times we're living in right now. Um and I have to say I really admire this ability to keep being funny even when dealing with some very dark themes. But that's kind of a signature move of yours too.
It is, and I do believe that artists, you don't have that much agency, really. There's a span of work that goes from tragedy to comedy, and most people are kind of solidly in the middle. But my muse is a muse, and if I have an idea about something, whether I'm dealing with a social construct or iniquity or in any number of things that I find difficult, if I can find a way to turn it and abuse it and make it amuse me, then I know that for me, it's valid. So, uh, yeah, let me tell you, it was a lot harder to do something about 911 with humor, but I eventually made that happen as well.
Wow. Um, should we keep going? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, here's a fantastic work that again seems to only exist for the camera. There's no it
Well,
doesn't seem like there's a performance and or a public place, but as a photograph, it's amazing.
it was a publicity photo for a little film um called Footsie, where she travels my naked body and then goes outdoors and eventually gets eaten by a shark. So, and that film actually will be oh, if I can say before showtime, that'll be in the Whitney Biennial.
All right. How many films have you made, just as a pause here?
Maybe 70 or more, something like that. Going back a long, long way. I mean, going back to Ann Arbor, where I was so involved with the filmmakers and the film festival. I didn't actually shoot things myself, but I was always telling everybody to make films with me, of me doing stuff. And so I've had great experiences with other people shooting my work for me.
And that would be included in the 70 odd films that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. And will have some of them been are some of them being screened right now at Sculpture Center?
Yes, yes, there is and there's a couple reels there, and then there'll be a showing of films at the biennial on in April 13th or something like that, 3rd or 13th something. That's in collaboration with Sculpture Center. So there's plenty to
But
look at Sculpture Center.
sure. And I'm sure there are things to watch online, but it's nice to know that about the Whitney screening as well. So people who want to know can go online, I guess, and find out about those dates
Yeah, right.
and confirm them. Moving on. All right, this is one of your signature best known pieces, the Padettes of P.O. Town.
That would be the Padettes of Po Town.
Oh, Po Town.
Yes, like I'm from Motown, so early on I wanted to be a Motown vocalist, but it didn't seem like that was ever going to happen, or more importantly, the Temptations, all of them. So this was the character that I made. I'm the dummy in the middle. I call them the primary colored group, and they dance to a Temptations in perfect sync. Um, and when I wear it on the street, I literally am followed by kids no matter where I go.
When we were talking in the introduction, you mentioned one of the moments where you kind of saw your life before you change was seeing Martha and the Vandellas performing live. So this notion of synchronized dancing and movements being perfectly choreographed and coordinated, you achieved it. I mean, it was a few years later, but it looks like in this work you've achieved what you set out to when you were watching that day.
Yes, and I don't have to pay extra.
It's cheap at half the price. There's another image of the Padettes of Potown, correct? I think it might
I
be
don't
next
know
to
if
it.
there is. Okay, no, there. Okay. We
This
don't.
piece fascinates me. I mean, again, just the photograph is an extraordinary thing. But then there was the event itself, or the shooting. Can you tell us how this happened?
Well, this was a piece that was a commission. So, a commission for Interview Magazine. They were doing a jazz issue. And so they asked me to interpret that. And so I made this costume, which was pretty two-dimensional. And it is one of the only pieces that I've ever made that was strictly for a photograph. I think no matter what I make, I find out some way to perform it. But this piece, um, I made it for a photograph, and then it became a postcard as an advertising for a show. So okay, so one thing got through the cracks, but never again.
I one of the things I like about it a, a lot is the lighting. I think it's beautifully, um, the way it kind of gradiates from one color to another and the way the shadows work. I just think it's beautifully lit.
Well, that's Neil Selkirk, who had long photographed many of my stuff, and he was rather kind of a brilliant photographer, and still is, as a matter of fact. So thank him for that.
Great. No, it's always interesting to talk to someone who's a performance artist to realize that they have relationships with the photographers who document them, and you can actually think about their work in terms of one photographer over time, interpreting what they do.
Yes, yes.
Um, we have so much to go through. Let's see what
Okay.
else is here. Oh yeah, Mike Hammer and Tom Sawyer, and who's the other one in this group?
Well, that's a cat there on the lower left-hand
Oh, and that
corner.
Tool Chest is from the same period.
Yes. Well, these are characters. These are 10 characters called the Tool Chest. And they were developed. I worked I desperately tried to sell out as much as I could, and so I worked for the Miller Company, and I developed a whole series of characters that were tools for for their designer Saturday, and put people in costumes and had them placed in front of all their competitors' showrooms. And so I made these characters for the Herman Miller Company, but then I used them later in various performances of my own, and then also made a film of them called The Tool Jest, um, which is actually kind of funny. It's about this anthropomorphic tool set that will come to your house and fix everything that you want when you are incapable of doing so.
So they're very helpful. They are
Helpful.
they're
Yes,
very they're
right.
good guys. So this started as a commercial commission, but then you took it on for your own performances in your own
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Which is always the case. I'll do something for a company, and then I usurp it and use it for my own proclivities.
But the inspiration always comes from, well, I like when you said my muse is a muse.
Yes.
Oh yeah, here's the drawing for Mike Hammer. Oh no,
No, it's the actual
the
costume.
actual piece.
Yeah, right. This series, you said you were from New Orleans, and this appeared in the do you have a place called the Center for Contemporary Art in New Orleans?
Contemporary Art Center, yes.
Yeah, so this appeared there. I did a performance there like long time ago.
And it was made for that perform. Oh no, it's from the Miller Group.
Yeah, yeah,
You made. So it's an example of one of the pieces that traveled and had another life separate.
right, right. My one of my challenges, like if I'm going to sell out, I have to use the works in my own works, so that I have not sold my soul just to like feed it.
Something else is added to the deal, to the
Yes,
transaction.
exactly.
Let's move on. Your Thanksgiving tin turkey from 1973.
Right. Well, this was a piece that I did for the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, which has a long and glorious past. And eh, but a person that makes a costume of their own design and construction and performs in the parade to the delight of the audience is not welcome in the Macy's fascist organization Thanksgiving Day parade. So the first year they kind of threw me out before the television cameras. And the second year they remembered this turkey and once again apprehended me before I got on TV. And the third and last year, they had sent a memo out about this Thanksgiving, this turkey. And at one point, again, right before the television cameras, they surrounded me
Oh.
like ICE does. They like there were 10 guys around me, and they made a flying wedge into the crowd and put me down into the subway and waited until the subway car was out of the station before they were convinced that I wasn't going to return and plague their Thanksgiving Day parade.
Whoa. Now, may I ask, if this is not a dumb question, what did they object to? Or was it simply the independence of your vision?
I believe it was that, and it was also that I was much more entertaining than anybody else was. So
Was
I'd
there
be
ever a
dancing.
time, I'm sorry, was there ever a historic precedent for what you did where a single person could be part of the Thanksgiving Day parade if they showed up and had an imaginative, something imaginative to wear?
Well, I mean, actually, they do now. There's a whole section of the parade where people can join in, but I have a problem with authority, and so I wanted to be along with the Rockettes or the marching McDonald's band or whatever, and I would be emulating their motions, and maybe it caused a slight bit of confusion with the young kids or the professional dancers, but it was very funny. And so I wasn't in the right place by their accounts, and which is often the case. I mean, I have entered the very open Easter parade and gotten thrown out of the Easter parade, which is just the avenue closed down because I didn't fit with the aesthetics of the cops that were involved. So
Ah.
I run into if you were, there was a quote one time during Solidarity from a person that was in Poland and said, anything not officially authorized is suspect. Wearing a funny hat can be seen as a political act. And I have found that to be true on so many circumstances that I have embarked upon, engaged in. And people don't want to see someone who's has enough cojones to walk their vision down into their narrow lives. And so I always am getting in trouble with authorities
Well, I mean, you
relentlessly.
say, well, I can see why that might happen, but you say that people don't want to see it. I would just paraphrase that lightly and say authorities don't want to see it. And maybe the
Okay.
reason authorities don't want to see it is because people really do want to see it. And like you said, you were more entertaining than the other things that were on display. What you're doing was funny. It's not like it's an amateur thing where you're just doing this for a lark. And I find that they don't want you to maybe get across to the people that would love what you're doing. And that's the authority part of it coming down on your work.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And they're not, I'm not part of their parade. So I am ostensibly a loose cannon.
Well, I think it's great. I wish there was some footage of this, but maybe there is from at least one
No,
of those parades. No footage. No footage.
no, no.
All right, what else do we have? Oh, yes, another holiday.
Another holiday. And this was the first time that humor appeared in Ms. Magazine. So um so that was a first. And then they later featured me as a Statue of Liberty on their bicentennial cover. So, and this was also the Christmas tree that was chasing that giant red ball across the snowy plain.
So they could be worn indoors and outdoors.
Yes, yes. And it flounced around Manhattan. And I must say that this is one piece that in a subway, every single person was watching every single thing that I did. They just could not, of all the costumes I've ever worn, this was a piece that people could not stop, could not avert their eyes from having a live Christmas tree in their car.
Now, that was just getting from one place to another, or did you
Yeah.
perform in the cars? This
No,
was just
no, I was going Christmas shopping.
fantastic. And then you said there's another one of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, right,
There's,
right.
let's move ahead. All right, this is the current show. Can you tell us something about these three pieces, four pieces, three?
Yeah, they're from all different performances. And so there's a great hall at Sculpture Center, which is I think 4 stories open tall. And so I have filled it with inflatables, and inflatables were some way that I have used to create stage props and also large sculptures without worrying about a heavy armature. And so it started small in some sense, and then I just kept making these things because they're very easy thing to travel around with, particularly when you're doing a show that happens to be on a stage. And so they occupy different aspects of my performing career, and they all, even though they're sort of static, some of them they seem like they're breathing, and all of these things, which my great emphasis is that everything I have created is for a performance of some kind. So it's all active um, presentation, even though it seems to be static now. There are videotapes that you can see some of the performance illuminated. And they might be characters that I interact with, or they might be the standalone, the giant feet, which were sort of influenced by the Wicked Witch of the West. Um, Anyhow, they look really kind of fabulous in the space. It really fills up this elegant, huge, archaic space like nobody's business. There's
Well,
another shot. Do you want to move on?
sure, but I wanted to ask, first of all, how do you make a big inflatable? I mean, is this something you now, is it a hands-on studio process, or do you have fabrication help, assistance? How does the
No,
making process work?
no, I sew everything, and um, and that makes it different than I think a lot of people who get things now, who get things done fabricated. But I've been making costumes for years, so it wasn't that hard for me to figure out how to make something that was like 37 feet tall, but I did for a long time have had an assistant when I was making the inflatables, and so I would cut things out and she would sew. So we were working as fast as we possibly could because you could not see what the work looked like until it was filled with air.
Right. That's, I guess, what was behind my question in a way. It's sort of complex.
Yes, 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 it is. And uh, so that's what we do. And I mean, I have a studio that keeps getting smaller and smaller as every year goes by. However, I do have a roof, and so sometimes I would try things out on the roof, but none of I don't know. Somehow they just grow by themselves, and it didn't seem to be a real problem. There's a very very large piece that will be in the Whitney. That I mean, even to this day, I have no idea how I made it in this small space.
And
So
keep on making them.
keep on making them. I sort of stopped because the when I saw like in a half a block around me, like 6 or 7 elves and Santa Clauses and snowmen inflated on people's porches in Tribeca, okay? I said, well, maybe it's time that I move on. So
The neighbors spoiled it.
yeah, well, overseas, I won't name countries, but you know,
Um, but okay, this is another one that I think people associate with your work because it's been reproduced a lot.
yes, this is utter delight. It was as part of a performance that called Bluebeard's Hassle the Writhes of the Wives, where I focused on the women, the wives of Bluebeard rather than Bluebeard himself, and they became they am each one of them emblem were examples of one of the 7 deadly sins, yet how they overcame it to become stars in their own right. So this is Utter Delight, who had many different afflictions. She was alcohol driven and also drugs. And then when she finally settled on sex, she settled in rather happily and made her life resolved all her addiction problems while happily settling into rampant sex.
Now, was Bluebeard's Hassle, The Rise of the Wives, sort of a seated performance where people would watch it happen on stage
Yes,
theatrically?
yes, yeah. That was a piece that I did at PS 122.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, there were, there are all different kinds of performances. There's the stage show, there's stuff I do in the street, there's stuff I do for movies, there's stuff I do for protests, for parades. I do works that are concerned with ecological problems or difficulties in various communities that I visit. So, but one of the main platforms of my works are theatrical. Well, I mean theatrical presentation, not theater per se. I mean the storyline was hit at like from 360-degree angle rather than a follow through storyline.
Sure. I guess I was thinking more like the distinction of a 5 or 10 minute, brief segue versus something where in a half an hour, many, many things happen and many characters come through and do things, which is how I've experienced your work in the past.
Oh, well, you never got the whole show. Too bad for you.
All right, let's keep going. This is from the Bluebeard's Hassle.
Yeah, this is the Yuposaurus, and it's about an artist who keeps her neighborhood keeps getting gentrified. She keeps having to move by the ever avid Yuposaurus invading, and finally she builds her dream house and then is able to resist the the consummate energy of the douchebag yuppies.
Now, I don't remember very many people publicly talking about gentrification in 1987. It felt like it was much more common to talk about it 10 years later. So it seems like, again, you're ahead of the curve.
Well, yeah, what's happening in my neighborhood. So, you know, I've been in, for example, in Tribeca, which has gone through this massive change from being a totally industrial neighborhood into, I think it's now almost the most expensive neighborhood in Manhattan, and that happened within my 55-year tenure here. So this was something that I saw early and awful.
Um, wow. Now, is this at the Sculpture Center?
Yes,
It
yes,
is.
it is.
Included. Great. We still have more to go through. And
Okay.
now this is much more recent. The temple have been here from Roman holiday.
Right. This was a piece that's used as a backdrop. I was in Rome for a year. I got the Rome Prize, and so I did a piece there called Saints Alive from Unction to Function, which updated the lives and the lies of the saints and put them back out into the streets and the piazzas from whence they came. And so, with these nine different characters, they were street walks, and again, even though it was Saint Agatha and Saint Lucy and the nincompope, and once again, I was booted off every aspect that I entered, every formal aspect that I entered in, every church, the Colosseum. I was arrested at the Vatican for impersonating the Pope with a aqua pistole dispensing holy water. So when I came back, I this was the setting that I used for my theatrical quote unquote performance of those different ambulations.
Now, the nincompope
Yeah,
was one of the characters,
yeah.
but he didn't make it into the photo section, or he didn't go to the Vatican.
No, he did go to the Vatican, and I was at the
Oh,
Vatican.
there we go.
There we go. There he is. I was at the Vatican, and then the Swiss guards came over and arrested me for impersonating the Pope. And I was in the slammer for 5 hours, and but it yeah anyhow released because I was they control all their visuals. And so they didn't speak any English. They wanted to know what nincompoop meant, and I said, "Oh, it means little pope." And anyhow, it was
Another
like
good reason for puns, because they're hard to translate.
they're hard to translate, and I got the last laugh because when I left, finally, it being Italy, not someplace like Hungary or Germany or something, they thought it was they understood it because they got the catalog from the show that the Academy had constructed, and so when I left, everybody was kissing each other goodbye, me and the cops. So
Well, as a former Catholic, thank you for bringing your faith to the forefront
you're very
of the
welcome.
conversation. I think we have a couple more before we get to the questions, or more than a couple more. Did
Oh.
we skip anything? Did we?
Eh, Uh,
No, I don't think
yeah,
so.
but those are okay.
Well,
That this is the womb with a view, which was featured as the vehicle for the Ark in a performance called Nora's Art, where the presentation, well, I mean, the précis was that what if I had been chosen the one that was supposed to build an ark to take people sail the seas? And so that was the nature of that particular performance, and the ark was became the womb with a view. So it's a long story. There was a media storm. Um, and but at the end, everybody that was involved in the performance, and I had a lot of people at that time, we all entered into the ark through the pussy and
you-
zipped it up and then rollicked back and forth. It was a real showstopper, I must say.
how many times was it performed?
Many, many times all over the country, in Europe. Very
Fantastic.
popular piece, I must say.
No, when I shared this around as a promo for today's talk, many people said, "Oh, I know this artist." It was the piece
Good,
to
good.
to
Okay.
that most closely relate to. Let's keep going until we're oh, here we go.
Okay, so
The next
the
revolution.
next series is like four or five characters I think are included, and these were very early from 1971. I just moved to New York from Ann Arbor, and I was entranced with the kind of caricature that was going on in the cities of women in their ordinary dress, and so I did the new Yuck Women. This was the DR, Daughter of the American Revolution, at Lincoln Center. And show the next slide.
Yeah.
Next. and the Women's Lib, and the Playboy Bunny, which has had a long and glorious past, getting kicked out of the Playboy Bunny Club back in the day, which
When
those,
that meant something.
yeah, those of you that are younger have no idea what it was like. But it was a private club. They had bunnies. Gloria Steinem actually was as a reporter, worked in the Bunny Club. And one more, I think, and the model, where those are the first time platform shoes ever appeared in New York. I had made those shoes out of 2-pound coffee tins. So I'm like about 7.5 feet tall. So these characters were hanging in the museum at the Museum of Contemporary Crafts, and then I would go in every day and put on a different character and go about the city doing whatever that person would ordinarily do.
Where was the
It's
Museum
kind of
of
a
Contemporary Craft?
sociological experiment. Yeah.
Was the Museum of Contemporary Craft at Columbus Circle then?
No, no,
No.
it was right next door to MoMA.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Of course. Now I remember. Okay, do we have any more visuals to go?
a little
Oh,
bit.
there's the
That's the Pasta Madonna, one of the women that trailed around the streets. The next one. Next. Oh, well, so then also in the show at Sculpture Center are a lot of hats and ephemera that I wear on a daily situation, or going to special events. And so this just represented by one piece here, but the loony. I was upstate and in a residency, and there were loons living on the lake, and I
Mm.
so with a mouthpiece, I made that hat and swam underwater to try to make friends with the other loons.
And did it work?
I got within 4 feet before they
Because
noticed I was a little different.
I guess it's about the call. They do have that really special
Oh,
call.
they do. Yeah.
And what else? Oh yeah.
Okay. So the next three pieces are I've also put costumes on trees in various situations. This was at Art Park. This is Charles de Gaulle. And next slide. This is Miss Red Oak, and then the man who fell to earth. Um, so it was another way for me to structure my work on an armature that happened to be trees. So I created like 28 trees in this copse, and then I had a lot of people wearing costumes and that of natural fiber. The trees were wearing costumes of man-made fiber, and we did a nighttime performance. But it was, and then so that was like the first outdoor kind of situation that I did formally, and it's led to a lot of other situations that not represented here, but anyhow, very fecund idea to use structures that exist as a way to make characters.
Well, and also, I mean, just Art Park was such an amazing thing while
Yeah,
it was going on. It was unique in the United States, I think. Uh,
right.
and the
The
next,
the the next
sorry.
slide is also from Art Park. That was like the Omen, which is in the show, that came down over that hill like the seventh seal, and into the forest. It was, yes, Art Park was an astonishing experiment, back when money was flowing for the arts and people had a lot of good ideas.
And is this you and or is it five people? I mean, it's five
No,
figures.
it's me with
You.
four other non-committed friends.
And then I think this is kind of wrapping it up, this next one of the astronauts.
Yeah, I was down in near Cape Canaveral, and so I did a couple of pieces in response to the the moon, the the stoppage of the experiments with the moon rack. She's like, what am I talking about here? Um, they stopped doing lunar landings, and so this was a kind of a piece about how the moon module got stuck up on a landscape and was trying to get back to Earth. So this was a part of a actually an 18-hour performance on the beach, which also featured the nesting bottleback turtles that were also endangered.
Wow. Wow.
And people just like they came to the beach and then they're just transfixed by, there were eight astronauts, there were turtles in and out of the water, massive turtles, tortoises. Let's see what else there is. Next one. And experimenting with air, trying to achieve loft. This was dick docking.
That's a condom, right? And a dick.
Yes, that's a condom, and that would be a dick, Don.
A dick doc.
Dick.
Incredible. It gives me another sense of appreciation for how kind of ephemeral these moments are, how ephemeral the work can be. I mean, even when it's retained as sculpture, it's really about this moment in time and space.
Right. And and so few people will see that. It's not like you can invite people to like a performance on the beach. People kind of happened onto it, which is the way a lot of these things go. But, it's I'm okay with that. There are a lot of people that have, images that are burned into their mind for the rest of their lives.
Even images they don't want to see again. It's still in their minds. Um, how are we doing? I know it's Q&A time, but ooh.
And these are the bipolar bears uh, uh, that were complaining or were in a piece called Hello Folly, the flows and cons of global of Arctic drilling. So they took on this was when there was like the oil platform up in Alaska that started leaking. So this was anyhow, I do a lot of stuff about climate. I do a lot of stuff about politics currently, and but it's always done in a way that makes it accessible in a different way than just purely didactic um, information. So I figure you get two for the price of one. You can be amused, and also you can wonder why you were amused by this very difficult subject.
And get more engaged.
Yes, yeah. And this is what happens when you have so much work and you're ending up paying for a storage unit that like is really really formidable. So I do periodic ritual cleansings where I burn things down, which is a performance in itself. And I have to admit, I have burned a lot of things that I wish I hadn't, but anyhow, it's a beautiful thing. It's very cathartic. This one was done in the winter. It's very cathartic, and it does get rid of the stuff in a way that I no longer can do because it's not. They're not just made out of natural fibers anymore. There's a lot of plastic, so I have to figure out some other way to get rid of my work. Maybe I'll sell it.
I was going to say this should be a shot across the bow to a couple of museum acquisition committees.
Yes,
Like it's
yes,
if you don't collect it,
yes, yes,
it's gonna
yes.
disappear forever. I think it's time for some questions. Are you good with us wrapping up this portion of it?
Yeah.
All right. I think we have quite a few questions. No, I'm going to turn it over to Magali, or am I?
Incredible. Thank you both so much. That was such a delightful and rich conversation. We have a few questions from our audience. If any of you have a question for Pat, there is a link in the chat where you can submit your question. The first question comes from Ellen Fisher, and Ellen says, I see your work more like regalia than costumes. I'm sure you see the link between your work and the Dadaism. irony, nonsense, and the response to war, etc. I remember your street work on the streets in Soho. Now, what is the best costume for today's issues?
What's the best costume for date? Well, it changes with whatever the issue is. It's whatever I'm thinking, uh, whatever you're thinking, to translate that idea or that response into a visual and wear it. It's not just a sign, it's an expression of the idea. So it changes for every single thing that I do.
Can I follow that up just briefly, Pat? Were you surprised at all to note that people were coming to protest against ICE in inflatable frog costumes and confronting the terror with this humor, with this innocence?
I was surprised and so delighted because nothing is more humiliating to a tyrant than to be made fun of. I mean that's long standing, and I mean there are so many examples in history where only the fool is allowed to make fun of, but everybody else is restricted. So I thought it was a piece of brilliance that unfortunately it's not continuing as much at the moment because things are rather serious right now.
Of course.
Thank you for that answer, Pat. Now, question, Ellen. The next question comes from S. Capone, and they say, "Hello, Pat. From the start, you have approached art from the point of view of a humorist and absurdist. A certain amount of humor seems to be tolerated in contemporary art as long as it's dry or oblique. Why doesn't the art world take humor, vulgarity, and nonsense more seriously?"
Because I think it's too much of a challenge to their view of authority, and it's something that has been prevalent throughout the ages, and it's not surprising, but if you keep, it turns out that if you keep doing it, then eventually people will see the wisdom of your skewering of your humor, of your extremities. I mean, look how long it took people to accept Buster Keaton and Jacques Tati and Charlie Chaplin as the genius that they were. I mean, it's okay to be entertained, but for some reason, it's not justified as easily as someone who's making you weep uncontrollably. Don't don't yawn, young lady, when I'm talking, because I know what you've been doing last night. Anybody else?
My apologies for my yawn.
Oh, it's okay.
The next
Okay.
question comes from Selby. Selby says, "How do you frame and present photos of your work?"
Well, I don't. I just use them in terms of. I mean, I have to record them. And I haven't had so many circumstances where I have had shows, okay, exhibitions. So I make sure that I have as good a photograph of my work as possible because I know that maybe it's never going to be seen again. So I keep those things. I do slide presentations. I use them in my performances, and so the idea of actually selling a photograph of the work has never really crossed my mind. I, however, have made a number of books with the photographs. I sell posters, I sell postcards. So it's more like a more a pedestrian level of putting my stuff out there with photography.
Thank you for that answer. The next question is going to come from Chloe. I'll give you a chance to unmute, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Pat and Dan, for this conversation. It's been such a pleasure to listen to. Pat, I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about how you think about narrative and sequencing with your costumes as well as with your performances. Sometimes it feels like the sequencing of the performance is built into the fabric of the work, especially with something like coat of arms, like you're thinking about the way it comes together and comes apart and it's very structure. But other times I feel like with the inflatables or with other performances, it might come from somewhere else. And I'm really curious how that develops in the studio and how you think about it.
Um, well, I think, things that inspire me, like a word or a situation or a phrase or an iniquity. And from that part, I start. I make a, you know, I ha- I create the visual. I make a like some tragically small, hopeless drawing of what it's going to be, and then it builds out from there. It's like kind of like a glue that. Oh well, if I a polar bear, bipolar bear. Oh, so if you have a lot of them. Oh. Well, what if they were like traveling south and if they were in canoes on the lake? And so, it's if I spend enough work making something, I'm thinking about it, I'm living it all the time. And so, my subconscious is actually working for me, not getting paid that well, but it's working for me. And so if I have all of this energy imbued into something, something will eventually come out of it that will be, uh, it may be like a hopeless storyline, or it might be a more complicated storyline, or it might be accumulation of storylines that makes the bigger picture. But I figure if, and a lot of times there are times I go out and I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. But but because I'm the energy has been there in preparation for it, the universe like supplies me with some like cues. And so I think I figure things out on the fly.
Related to that, did film come about that way? Was that something that you reached for eventually because it provided another way to splice and consider the narrative differently?
Yes. And it was also a way to present a character that is almost impossible to present indoors. I mean, if you're out in the street and something's happening and the cops are following you, I mean, it's very funny if you're filming it, and it's funnier if you're looking at it rather than somebody telling you like some story about it. So it was a way of bringing my outside life indoors when I'm doing performances. So, you can look at a whole reel of films and think, oh, well, I mean, it's all over. It's, as I have often said, the world is my stooge. And so I go out there, and if I can capture it with luck and, some, some pocket change by getting somebody to film me, then I'm a happy person.
Thank you for answering my questions, Pat. Back over to you, Magli.
Thank you for that question, Chloe, and that answer, Pat. Our last question is going to come from Charlie, and I'm going to give Charlie a chance to unmute.
Thank you, Magli. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Pat. This has been such an incredible conversation. Pat, you mentioned briefly in passing the difficulty of making a work around 9/11. And you also mentioned you've lived in Tribeca for your 55 years. So I just wanted to ask, what was the work? How did you come to it? Um, and what was your experience at that tragic time?
It's okay, I'm going to try to make this small. It's a very complicated story, but I have lived I mean, when I first moved to New York and moved here 2 years after I was on the Bowery and then I came here, the World Trade Center was not even finished. Okay? It was 70 stories tall that my dad went up during lunch hour one time. to look at it. And so I have had lots of experiences with the Trade Center. There used to be a busker festival. There used to be the Festival of the Avant-Garde with Carol E. Schneeman. Not Carol E. Schneeman. Is that no, the cellist.
Charlotte Mormon.
Charlotte Mormon had, thank you, Dan, um, started that. And so they were, I developed, I had a relationship with the Trade Center on many levels, being um, a part, using it as being hired by folks that were in the Trade Center. And there were other like extenuate, really extreme circumstances where, like, one night I went up, in the middle of the night, I rode up the elevator with some guy I picked up, some Croatian guy I picked up, and got to Windows on the World at the top, and it was completely empty. And then we eventually ended up making love in all four corners of the restaurant. So I have this like rich past with the Trade Center because it was also right outside my window. And so, I was all down there and around there and doing stuff there. And it was the plaza. So when 911 happened, I knew four people it was my neighborhood. I knew four people that died. And I went down there immediately to see what I could do to help. And, and, and worked in the reclamation, in those first couple of weeks, and at a supply center right at Chambers and West Street.
Oh.
I had I say that I made those bins laden with stuff for all the people that were working there. So I didn't, I never thought I would make art again, because it was such a grueling experience. But a cop actually told me, he said, like, um, I know you, he was talking with me, and he says, I told him I didn't think I would happen. And he says, well, I know you will. I know you will. I trust you. You will. And then he gave me a hug, and I'm a person from the 60s, right? And I'm getting this hug of reassurance from a cop. And then I realized I'm hugging a pig. Okay. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going through all this stuff. And then eventually I was able to use the earlier material, these funny stories that I have of the Trade Center, and also all the curious and wonderful stories that I had working, trying to organize downtown. So I always knew that I could make people laugh, but I had no idea I could also make people cry. And it was a piece that I did all over the country, and it was a place where people could express. Afterwards, there was always a discussion, and people could tell me what their feelings were about that whole thing. So it was a medium, um, but also during half of the performance, it actually was amusing, and I replicated the fall, the fire, and everything. I didn't think I didn't think I could ever have done something like that, and but it was profoundly moving for both me and the audience. So now we're in a different time. Now we're in a different god-awful time. Well, on that happy note, Jesus,
Thank you, Pat.
thank
Thank
you.
you for that question, Charlie, and that answer, Pat. That concludes our Q&A. Before we close out, Pat will be reading a little something for us. I'll turn it back over to you, Pat.
Okay. Okay. Just because we had mentioned this earlier, Dan, and about the puns and the word plays, which are really central to my practice. I read this book, Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, when I was 8 years old, and it had a profound effect on me. The brilliant polymath Charles Dobson, aka Lewis Carroll. So I'm just going to read a little section that to me is what changed, caused genetic damage. Okay. And this is a conversation between the mock turtle, the griffin, and Alice. Once, said the mock turtle at last with a deep sigh, I was a real turtle. These words were followed by a very long silence, broken only by the occasional exclamation of "Huff" from the griffin and the constant heavy sobbing of the mock turtle. When we were little, the mock turtle went on more calmly, though still sobbing a little now and then. We went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise. Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one? Alice asked. We called him Tortoise because he taught us, said the mock turtle angrily. Really, you are very dull. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question, added the griffin, and then they both sat silent and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last the griffin said to the mock turtle, Drive on, old fellow, don't be all day about it. And he went on in these words, Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it. I never said I didn't, interrupted Alice. You did, said the mock turtle. Hold your tongue, added the griffin. Before Alice could speak again, the mock turtle went on. We had the best of education. In fact, we went to school every day. I've been to day school too, said Alice. You needn't be so proud as all that. With extras? Asked the mock turtle a little anxiously. Yes, said Alice. We learned French and music. And washing? Said the mock turtle. Certainly not, said Alice indignantly. Ah, then yours wasn't a really good school, said the mock turtle in a tone of great relief. Now at ours, they had at the end of the bill French, music, and washing extra. You couldn't have wired it much, said Alice, living at the bottom of the sea. I couldn't afford to learn it, said the mock turtle with a sigh. I only took the regular course. What was that? Inquired Alice. Reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with, said the mock turtle, and then the different branches of arithmetic. Ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. I never heard of uglification, Alice ventured to say. What is it? The griffin lifted up both his paws in surprise. Never heard of uglifying, he exclaimed. You know what to beautify is, I suppose? Yes, Alice said doubtfully. It means to make something prettier. Well, then, the griffin went on, if you don't know what to uglify is, you are a simpleton. Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more, so she turned to the mock turtle and said, What else did you learn? Well, there was mystery, the mock turtle replied, counting off the subject on his flappers. Mystery, ancient and modern, with seaography, then drawing. The drawing master was an old conger eel that used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils. What was that like? Said Alice. Well, I can't show it to you myself. I'm too stiff. And the griffin never learned it. Hadn't time, said the griffin. I went to the classical master, though. He was a crab, he was. I never went to him, the mock turtle said with a sigh. He taught laughing and grief, they used to say. It goes on. But you can see that as a child, to read that, it never left my consciousness. So I said, if someone as intelligent and diverse as someone like that can write a book for children and adults and speak in languages, speak in tongues, and be a photographer, and be a mathematician, and be an inventor, and be a writer, I said, I can do it too.
Brava.
Thank you so much, Pat. What a beautiful way to close us out. And thank you, Dan. Thank you, David from David Peter Francis and Kyle from Sculpture Center for your help in preparing for today's event. We'd also like to thank the Marion Bolton Kippy Stroud Foundation and Seeker Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these weekday conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rail's YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. You can support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're free, join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Alex Kortler and Will Heinrich on the event of Off Peak at Magenta Plains. We'll also be having our February issue launch party at Miguel Abreu Gallery at 6 p.m. If you're free, join us then too. And as is Rail tradition, you can now all unmute and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Pat.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Pat and Dan.
Such a great
Thank you, Pat.
conversation.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dan.
Pat.
So good
Thank
to-
you, Pat.
That was great. Thank you.
Can't wait to see the show.
No.
Yeah, go see the show, everybody.
Yes.
Congratulations,
Bye,
Pat.
Fong.
Very important. Hi, Dan. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye, Pat.
Bye, Pat.
Thumbs
Go
up.
see the show, you guys.
Thanks for
Very
dropping in,
important.
folks. And don't forget to see the show.
Absolutely, Pat. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.